Hello everyone, this is Ashraful Arifin, and today I'm about to show you how I usually edit my street images. I know many of you have asked and waited so long for this, so thank you so much for your patience, and let's just dive right into it. I usually shoot using backlight, and most of the time I underexpose my subject a little bit. My aim is to make the highlights not so harsh and to get some details in it. And as I shoot raw, I can always bring back the details in the shadow areas. Also, I always pre-plan and have a vision in my mind about how I want my images to look like. This helps me to save time and make my workflow so much easier. For example, in this image, I want to have that warm golden sunlight and kind of an early morning atmosphere. So all I have to do is to use those tools that can help me to get those early morning colors. So before I do any adjustments, I look through the image and try to see what are the problem areas I need to fix. For example, I'm seeing some fringes over here and some distracting colors in the background and a few distracting elements like these junks and darts. My target is to make sure that my subject gets the 100% attention and nothing really takes the eyes away from him. So I'm starting by doing some regular corrections. I'm going over to lens corrections first and just doing some adjustments. A little bit of vignette maybe, just a little bit. And from manual, I'm just getting rid of the fringes. I can still see some fringes over there, which I can get rid of in Photoshop. So for now, I'm okay with the adjustment. So I'm going back to the basic adjustment panel here. I will probably increase the contrast to add a bit more drama and more, pop to my subject. And I'm going to decrease the highlights to bring back some details in the highlights area. And I'll probably increase the shadows a bit just to bring back a little details. But if you overdo it, there will be more, grains and some fringes. So I'm doing this by very slowly just to bring back a little bit details, not too much. And I'll probably decrease the black a little bit just to get a bit of light in his face. And in the white balance, I'll increase the warmth. And I will take the tint slider towards green so that there's more, yellow tones in the highlights. So once I'm happy and done here in Camera Raw, I will open my image in Photoshop to make further adjustments. So now I can start color grading my image in Photoshop. I always start by duplicate my background layer, and the reason to do that is so that my main image stays untouched, and if I make any mistakes I can always go back. To do that, I press Command J on a Mac or Control J on Windows in my keyboard, and this will create a duplicate layer of my background image. Next, I'm going to the adjustment layers options here, and I always start by using curves. Here in curves, I can work separately on the highlights, midtones, and shadow areas. So first, I'm going to decrease the highlights a little bit, and I'm increasing the midtones and increasing the shadows to create a bit more contrast. 。  . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。
Okay. 。 . 。 . 。 .
Okay. 。 . Next, I'm going to bring back some light in the shadow areas. And to do that, I'm going to use another curves adjustment layer. And this time I'm just going to target the shadow areas. So I'm going here and just increasing this slider just to make sure that there are some light in my shadow. And I'm not going to do too much of it because I don't want any grains, just a little bit. Okay. Now, as you can see, it's actually affecting the whole image, and that's not what I want. I only want to enhance my subject. So when we use adjustment layers, there is a layer mask attached to it. So white means that whatever adjustment you just did, it's on, and if you want to, hide it, you just have to inverse it. That means you have to make this layer mask from white to black. And to do this, I can just press Command I or Control I on Windows. This will invert the layer mask and hide the adjustment you just made. And now I have to bring back the adjustments only to my subject. And to do that, I'm selecting brush tool by pressing B, or you can select brush tool from here. And I'm selecting the color white. And I'm just simply brushing over the parts where I want to bring back the adjustments. I can change the opacity. And if I think that I have overdone, I can select black and remove the parts where I don't want the changes. Next, I'm going to add a bit contrast to my subject, and same way I'm just going to the adjustment layers, and this time I'm selecting brightness contrast, and maybe I'll keep the brightness around 10 and contrast around 11. And same way I will invert the layer mask by pressing Command I, brush tool, white selected, and I'll brush over the area to bring back the adjustment I just made. Next, I'm going to get rid of the distracting colors in the backgrounds, and to do that, I'm going to adjustment layers, and I am choosing selective color. In selective color, from the drop down menu, I can actually target every individual color and make adjustments to them. So I want to get rid of these reds and these greens. So I'm selecting the red channel and I'm just decreasing the reds. Here. And also the greens. And same way, I'm just selecting the layer mask, inverting it, and with brush tools, just removing colors from the areas I want. Next, I will create some contrast, and same way, I'm just selecting brightness contrast and increasing the contrast over here and decreasing brightness. And same way, invert the layer mask, brush tool, and brushing over the areas I want the adjustment to work on. I'm just trying to create a vignette effect and make sure that my subject pops. Now I want to get rid of these blues in the background because I don't want any color to take away the eyes from my subject. So same way, from the adjustment layers, I'm selecting hue saturation, and in the hue saturation from the drop down menu, I'm selecting cyan, and I'm just decreasing the saturation a little bit. Also, I'll select blue and do the same. So it only targets the cyan and blue in the background. Same way, invert the layer mask, brush tool, and brush over the areas where I want this to take effect. Now I will enhance the light a bit, and to do that I am going to use another curves adjustment layer, and I'm increasing the highlights a bit. And from the drop down menu, I'm selecting red channel, and I'm increasing the reds in the highlights area. I want this to affect only the highlights, so I'm just making the adjustment in the highlights, and I will increase the yellow. Opposite of yellow is blue, so to increase yellows in the highlight area I have to decrease the blue. And I'll keep the shadow same, and I'll increase the green a little bit to give it a more uh, golden and brown kind of look, because green, yellow and red together is brown. Now I will use another adjustment layer, which is color balance, and here in color balance, from the drop down menu, first I will go to the highlights, and I will increase the reds and yellows with a touch of green to give that early morning, golden tone. And in the mid tones, I'll do the same. I'll increase the reds and yellows and a bit of green. Okay. Now I'm going to remove some warmth from these shadow areas because I want to create a tonal depth. And if I put this adjustment to overall image, it will look more like a filter, and that's not what I want. So I'm just selecting the brush tool, and I'm selecting black, decreasing the opacity a little bit, and just brushing over the shadow areas to remove few of those, to remove some of the warmth. And next I will make another adjustment using color balance, and this time I will make the adjustments only to the shadows. And for that, this time I'm increasing cyan and blue a little bit, to create a more contrasting effect with the warm highlight. And same way, invert the layer mask, brush tool, select white, and bring back the adjustment. And if I feel like it's too much, I can just go to the layer and decrease the opacity. Next, I will add a bit more contrast to my subject, especially in this shadow area, to create a bit more dramatic effect. And I'm just going to brightness contrast, increasing the contrast. And I'm selecting the layer mask, inverting, brush tool, and I'm making adjustments only to the area where I want. And now I'm seeing that the adjustment also affecting the colors over here and making it a bit more yellowish. So that's not what I want. And to fix that, I'm just going to the blending modes over here and I'm selecting luminosity. This will only affect the light, but it won't affect the color. Now I can get rid of these fringes over here, and if I zoom in, I'll see these more clearly. And to do that, this is a technique I personally use. And to do this, I merge all the layers together by pressing Shift, Command, Option, and E. And I'll duplicate this layer. Next, I'm going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'll keep increasing till I can't see the fringes anymore. This looks good. Hit OK. And now from the blending modes, I'll select color. Now I can see that all the fringes are gone, but at the same time it has taken away so much color. So I don't want that. I only want to make adjustments to the fringes. So what I'm doing now, I'm creating a layer mask from here, and just like before, I'll invert it, select brush tool, select white, and I'll just brush over the fringe areas. Now the fringes are totally gone. Now I'm finding this white spot over here. It's a bit distracting because I have so much warmth in this sunlight section, and it's just not matching with the warmth. So I'm going to make it a bit more warm, and to do this I'm going to create another adjustment layers, and this time it's solid color, and I'm selecting a warm color. hit OK. And from the blending modes, I'm selecting multiply. And basically what multiply does is it darkens the lighter areas. So I'll just decrease the opacity. And in the layer mask, I'll invert it, brush tool, and brush over the areas where I want this to take effect. And I can always decrease the opacity or increase it and make changes. For example, if I want to change the color, I can just double click in the layer, and from here I can always change the colors or make adjustments. Okay. Next, I'm going to enhance this light trace just a little bit and a new layer. And I'm going to the gradient tool here, and I'm selecting the radial gradient, and I'm selecting a warm color, a bit more orange, hit OK, and decreasing the opacity to like 15 to 16%, and just simply dragging it. Maybe a little bit here. And if I think that it's too much, I can just decrease the opacity. And I'll change the blending modes to screen. Next, I will get rid of some distracting areas, and I'm just merging all the layers, and selecting the lasso tool. And I'll just simply select the area where I want to make the adjustment, and I'll press Shift Delete on my keyboard, and this will create a content aware fill. And from here you can just select content aware and hit OK. And Photoshop will get rid of it for you. I'll do the same with few other parts. Next, I will probably increase the warmth of the overall image by using a color balance adjustment layer. And in the mid-tones, I'm just increasing the reds and yellows. And maybe a bit more contrast for my subject. Next, I will enhance the rim light a bit, and to do that, I'm just merging all the layers together once again. And I'm selecting the dodge tool from the drop down menu here. I'm selecting highlights, and I'm keeping the exposure around like 10%, and I'm simply brushing over the rim light area just to enhance it a bit. And next I will decrease the blacks in the shadow area to give it a more painterly look and not so much contrasting, because I personally try to make my images look more like a painting, and in painting there's no pure black. So to do this, I'm just going to selective color and I'm selecting black. I'm decreasing the black and I'll add a bit yellow to it just to match with the overall ambience. Okay, and if I think that I have overdone, I can just decrease the opacity to bring back a bit of contrast. And now if I think that I need more warmth in the highlight area, I can just use a selective color or color balance layer and increase the reds and yellows in the highlight section. So let's use a selective color adjustment here, and I'm going to reds. I'm increasing it. Minus cyan means more reds, and I will increase the yellow in it so it gives it more a golden look. And I will invert the layer mask, selecting brush tool, selecting color white, same way as before. I will brush over the areas where I want the adjustment to take place. So at this point I take a break for like a day and I come back to the image with a fresh eye so that I can see the other mistakes I have made and the errors that I have overlooked in the first place. And that's it. That's how I usually edit my images. And let's have a look of the before and after. This was the before and this is the after. As you can see, I like to work step by step and by making small adjustments. And I always have a plan when I go to edit. Therefore, I know what it should look like. It's all about those tiny little steps. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed. And there will definitely be more detailed videos and tutorials. So thank you, and I hope to see you on the next one.